Hey listeners, welcome back to the show. Thank you so much for tuning into Championing Hidden Heroes podcast. As you guys know by now, this podcast I created just to unpick the habits of the successful hidden heroes in business. So the people who work behind the scenes. Normally they don't get sort of the public recognition that they deserve while they're in that role. And we want to give those people a voice and be a platform for them to share their stories. You know, we really like to understand what makes them great, why they do what they do, and then how they've developed their careers, how that experience has contributed to that, biggest successes and failures, and sort of everything in between. So the idea is that at the end of it, you can take away some lessons and apply them to your own life. So I'll stop talking now, but my guest today is Monique Helstrom. Hi, Monique.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Well, I mean, that's such an interesting question these days now, isn't it?
Multitude of answers. Never know where it's going to go.
Yes, true.
No longer are people just saying, fine, thanks, you.
Fine, thanks, you. Yeah, great. How's the weather? We all have different answers to that question. Generally speaking, I'm good. I'm alive. So
that's good.
I woke up this morning. Everything is good.
And you're in the US at the moment?
I'm in the US. I'm in Denver, Colorado. Sunny, beautiful, gorgeous summer, Denver, Colorado.
Nice. I'm in Bristol, England. It's not sunny and beautiful, but it's still
ever.
Nice. Listen, we've had 6 glorious weeks of weather, actually. It's been
amazing.
Ridiculous. Yeah, but now it's really, really, I'm on holiday this week. I've taken a week off work, just like a staycation, and I do this for fun, you know. I'm just kidding. Yeah, we picked the worst week weather-wise. It's been rubbish, but I'll just give a brief intro into you, Monique. So Monique, for those of you who don't know, you've probably done some research, but Monique spent 10 years. Was it 10 years or just about 10 years?
Almost, just shy. Nine. I think I was almost at 9. I was at the 9-year mark.
Amazing. Yeah, and you worked as the executive assistant producer, and my favorite, the chief of Simon Sinek. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, for those of you who don't know Simon Sinek, he's the sort of the best-selling author and TED celebrity and various other things. And now Monique is a business owner. She coaches, and one of the things I liked about Monique, I was just telling her before we started, is, you know, she's sort of dedicated her life to helping other people understand their role and their own purpose, and help sort of people see the value of great partnerships and great ideas and helping them bring to life. And I just love that. And she's really inspiring. And I think the more I've got to know Monique, the more I've really resonated with her sort of view on the world and just energy and enthusiasm. And she has a really inspiring story. So I just hope that you guys will feel inspired at the end of this. And we both feel very passionately about your work, having a work purpose and your why. And I'm sure Monique will cover a bit of that today, and why we both think it's the perfect time to reevaluate your life and your career.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I think before we sort of start and go through your story, and, you know, we were just talking before we sort of pressed record about what's going on in the world. And I think it would be wrong not to sort of address that, you know.
Sure.
In the UK, we've been in lockdown for 12 weeks. And there's, alongside that lockdown, which in itself is, you know, just an unbelievable concept, there have been like seismic changes happening across society, you know, especially with, obviously in the US, you guys must be feeling this so much with what's happening with Black Lives Matter. And it's actually sort of shaken me to the core. I was saying at the start, like, this has been sort of a really tough couple of weeks where I've done a lot of self-reflecting. And I do think it is important that we're not silent about all of this,
Sure.
and ask ourselves those questions. But equally, you know, we've got mass unemployment going on. We've got people dying. The news is, you know, terrifying. We've got people afraid to leave their houses. I mean, it really is just a proper period of change. I've been in my head, I've been sort of calling it like the fourth industrial revolution. Like it's just rewriting the rule book. But I'm more interested in your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head that we're all sort of shaken to the core about this. And I personally, this is my viewpoint, I don't think that's a bad thing. I think we have all been living, you know, we do have a wonderful life. We wake up every day and we have opportunities, and we live in a society right now that is plentiful for the most part. And being shook to the core, I don't think is a bad thing. I think we need a little bit of that every now and again. And again, what we were talking about before we hit record, you know, it's, I believe that death and destruction and demise is something that helps with a rebirth. And I think we will, I'm an optimist, and I wholeheartedly believe we are going to come out of this, and we are going to come out a stronger society and better versions of ourselves. I use the word evolution a lot, and I do that on purpose because we all have the ability and can get to our next evolution as humans, as a society, as a country, as a world. And it starts on the individual level. I talk about it a lot that, you know, companies talk about changing, and cultures talk about changing, and countries talk about we need change. But then when you pare it all the way down to the individual, we're so scared of change. And we don't want to change our behaviors, and we don't want to change how we think. And we just want to push and push and push and say, no, I'm putting my foot in the ground. And when each of us as individuals are not willing to change, then society is never going to change, because society is made up of individuals. Countries are never going to change, and this world is never going to change. So I think we each have a responsibility right now to be shook to the core, figure out what that means, find our purpose, help other people out, and be the change. I mean, it's so trite to say that these days, but it's the only way this is actually going to work, because there's not a system that changes. Systems are made up of people. Companies don't change. Companies are made up of people. We think it's like this automated matrix thing happening in the background where somebody in the White House or in Congress is just going to pull a lever and boom, we're all just going to be like, ta-da, we're equal. Like, no, this has taken hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, and each of us on an individual level has to do our part. So that's my soapbox. And by that, I'm going to just throw in there, just to really cut the nail, hit the nail on the head, vote. If you are in America, if you don't go to the polls in November, if you're not voting for your local government, your state government, your county government, and the federal government, then I don't want to hear any noise out of your mouth. I just really am tired of people complaining, but then not actually doing the actions that we have fought for centuries to get the right to vote as women, as African Americans, as immigrants, all of this. And you know, people are marching and doing all these things, but then the polls happen and they don't vote.
Yeah.
How are you going to change?
Why do people not go and vote, do you think?
I mean, I know I can speak for America, but you know, I think it's a combination of they don't know the information. It could be a number of things. They just don't have the information. So instead of actually looking for it, they just sort of throw their hands up. They use the excuse, my vote isn't going to change anything. And that's probably one of the favorite excuses in the United States. It's not going to do anything. Well, when 1 million people say that, 1 million votes means something. So it does mean something. You know, and just, I think it's a lot of just fear. I think it's fear.
People do get a bit like, you know, when they're not seeing things changing, I suppose they, like you say, they feel like their vote doesn't matter, or that it doesn't make a difference. But if everyone thinks that, you know, and in the last election, you guys had such a low turnout for your vote.
Such a low turnout. And I have friends right now that are calling me and protesting and all this, and I know for a fact they didn't vote in the last election. And I cannot keep my mouth shut about that. I just really can't. I mean,
but we did work so hard to get the vote. Like, we worked so hard to get the vote. You know, I was watching, I don't know if you've been watching it, but I watched Becoming by, you know, Michelle Obama's documentary on Netflix. And there's a new one with Hillary Clinton's just done part one. And, you know, these they're two women that categorically at younger age were told they wouldn't be able to achieve what they wanted to achieve, or that women couldn't possibly do that, or that they shouldn't think that they were, smart enough, to be able to take these boys on at their own game, and just wall after wall after wall after wall that they had to keep tearing down. And I was like, God, I'm so grateful that you guys have done that, because we wouldn't be where we are now without that. And that's one of my biggest fears around the pandemic, is the impact on the sort of the great strides we've made for like equality for women working in the working world, because so many women have taken on the responsibility of looking after children, whilst and therefore having to give up their jobs. And actually the other day I was, walking around and I saw, the sister looking after the two, she was only probably like 12 or 13, but she was looking after the younger children, because obviously I imagine the parents are trying to work. And I do wonder about like the impact of all of that on sort of the great strides we've taken in the equality in work and workplace and in life for women. But I think it's good anyway. We've made good progress. But what do you think about that? Is that a crazy thought, or?
I think it's only been 50 years since women have had the right to vote. It hasn't been that long. Yeah. And I think a lot of the younger generations, and even my generation, just it thinks that this happened so long ago, and they just take it for granted. And it really wasn't that long ago that we got this right to vote. And it was one person who just stood up and said, I am not standing for this anymore. And then they were joined by 2, and they were joined by 4, and they were joined by 100. That's how change happens. You have to join together. And yes, it is an interesting concept that the women have sort of had to double down, where we were already carrying a load of everything. We're really carrying a load of everything right now. And I think, Dan, doesn't that show you just how smart and how strong and how powerful and how flexible women are? Yeah. Like, we have the power to do this.
Yeah. Resilient as well, like I think resilience, like the sheer level of like crap that we've had to do, absolutely every single role in the household.
Amen.
Is kind of, crackers. But I think asking ourselves the uncomfortable questions is something that, you're right, we don't really do enough, because we kind of just go through the motion.
Well, we talk about this a lot now. Well, I constantly talk about this YouTube video from this guy named Rabbi Twersky, who talked about it's the lobster story. And I've if you've ever heard me say this, apologies, but I'll give you the rundown. But it's about change and stress, and basically it's how do lobsters grow. Their shell on the outside doesn't grow, it doesn't move. So whenever they're getting bigger and bigger, their insides, the soft mushy part that we eat, which is gross to say, but the soft mushy part literally just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and they get stretched and stretched into that shell, and it becomes uncomfortable, and it becomes hard, and it becomes stressful, and it hurts. So they go under a rock, they cast off their shell, they hide from predators, the outside layer of their skin gets hard, and then they continue on. And this happens over and over and over and over again. The catalyst for them to grow is stress and pain and uncomfortableness. And we as a society have created such systemic ways of avoiding pain and avoiding stress. It could be popping a pill, it could be smoking a thing, it could be drinking a thing, it could be whatever it is, but we try and avoid the hard, the stressful, the painful. And my view is run towards it, because at the other side of that pain, at the other side of evolution, a new learning is a new perspective, a new way to grow. We're all like feeling this, like, our this lifetime that we're living, we will never forget this. We will never forget this. It's like 9/11. We will never forget the pandemic. We will never forget George Floyd. It is in our minds forever. And let's use it to grow. Let's use it to evolve, and let's use it to become a better versions of ourselves.
I love that. I think that's, I think it's so true. And it's definitely something that I'm actually someone who generally likes change. Like you, I sort of run towards it. I get quite sort of like pumped by change. And I like the idea of running towards the problem. I think that's something that executive assistants are brilliant at anyway. You know, they're naturally the ones that run towards problems and try and solve them. But actually, as a business owner,
yeah, you give an executive assistant like a messy closet.
Yeah, absolutely, you do. But actually, as a business owner, it's kind of you know, I think it's definitely our role to be thinking about how, you know, we can take the business forward and how we can change the business for the better. And but equally, I do that for myself as an individual, because I want everyone that works at Just Search, but equally the team and our wider community to be the best they possibly can be too. And that does involve challenging yourself. And I suppose the question I've asked myself a lot over the last couple of weeks is, what more can we as a business be doing to support diversity and inclusion? Because I think as recruiters, we have a really pivotal role, actually, to really, really, really challenge sort of systemic beliefs and biases that exist, whether they're conscious or unconscious. And I think we have a responsibility to really challenge those views. And we've definitely been doing that, like for the last 10 years we've been in business, but we could definitely be doing more. And it's like, there's still more to do. And I think that was a harsh reality for me, where I just thought, God, you know, even though I've thought I've been doing that, I haven't done enough.
Mm-hmm. And again, this is, I think, a good thing for us to be thinking about, is how can each of us take our puzzle piece, take what we have, take our jobs, our lives, our whatever it is, and how do we add in more diversity and inclusion, and how do we stand up for that? And if everyone in the world is saying that about their own businesses, if you're a recruiter, you know, I don't know what it could be, but standing up and going into when a company says, hey, I want to hire someone, and you look and you say, wow, this is an entire company of the same looking type of people, then maybe having your recruiter say, guys, I think my recommendation to you is you need to add a little diversity, and here's the candidates that I'm going to pick for you. If you're a speaker, I know a lot of speakers right now who are saying, I'm not going to speak at a conference on diverse. I'm not going to get on a panel that's what we call in America a panel of all men, you know, and us individually using the power that we do wield to say, this is how I'm going to move forward, and this is the line I'm drawing in the sand. That's changed. That is systemic change. That is the beginning of systemic change, is each of us saying, this is how I'm going to run my life, and you can do whatever you want. We can't change other people. I wish we could. I wish we had the control to be able to do that, but we can't. But all we can do is control ourselves, draw a line in the sand, and say, this is how I'm going to operate my life. You do what you want. This is what I'm doing.
Like questioning why we do certain things. Like that's something I've been doing an unbelievable amount over the last 12 weeks. I'm like, why was I doing that? You know, why did I think it was sensible to be, you know, schlepping around, running around, chasing constantly, never spending enough time with my children, and trying to fit everything in, and like, why on earth was I doing that? Mm-hmm. And that's been really liberating, I think, for me. Sort of, and I guess I'm in a position of in a privilege in that way, that I've had some reflecting time. But equally, as a business, you know, like recruitment, as I'm sure you can all see, is, you know, not very buoyant. And you know, certain industries are doing incredibly well, but the majority of the world isn't doing very well from a recruitment perspective, and unemployment's skyrocketing. And I was saying you before, I went into the office last week, and I was just like, wow, this is like everything I've built for 10 years. Like, I've got to reevaluate this. Like we've got to change and adapt. And we were already quite progressive and innovative, and we've got to be even more progressive and innovative. We've got to, you know, got to be doing even more things differently. And I was like, God, that's wow, you know, and that's, I think every business, every person has got to go on that journey. And I suppose that leads me nicely into you and your beliefs and your backgrounds and your story, which I think would be really great for people to hear. So, you know, why don't you do that? Why don't you tell us who you are?
All about me. Wow. My story. Oh, I was born in Philadelphia. So my story is, hopefully one that resonates with a few people. I have always been a logistics oriented type of. I've been taught this. Very important to say. I was taught how to be organized and type A as a child. That is not something that you're born with. It's a learned behavior. And I was born into an Army father and a very organized office manager mother who showed me how to organize things and move forward with that. So I was an event planner. I did a few different things. And then, as you said, spent the last almost decade of my life with Simon Sinek as the chief of Simon. And my story is really one of fear and almost jealousy, I want to say, that for a really long time, I didn't think that my skill set, my strengths were that important, were that necessary, were going to change the world, being hyper organized and resilient and thorough like a bloodhound. For whatever reason, I always wanted to be something else. I always had the opportunity to be around visionaries and be around executives and be around people that came up with these wonderful, grand ideas. And I was always jealous of that type of job, or jealous of the director of marketing who could just come up with these concepts and everyone sat down and listened to them and did what they said. And I was just this person behind the scenes who just did the stuff. And so for a really long time, I felt bad about myself. And that showed up in me wanting to prove, that showed up in some bad attitudes for a long time, that showed up in martyrdom and the victimization, personality trait. And I've gone through that for a very long time. And what I thankfully realized over the last, I'd say 5 or so years, is that we each have a role to play. We each have a part in this system. We each have our puzzle piece, as I keep talking about, that is important, that is making change. And we all have a role in making great ideas come to life, whatever it might be. Even the smallest piece, even that person who's making a car that just tightens that last bolt on the wheel, that person is making that car safe for somebody else to drive and making it able for that family to take the vacation. And so I dedicated my life now to helping people understand their strengths, understand where they need to be, what is their purpose, who they are, and how they can use what they have for the greater good to help out the world.
I have goosebumps.
A long-winded version.
No. I have goosebumps because I just love that so much. Like, I think, so many people will resonate with that. They think their contribution doesn't matter, or they don't think they're not the one that's getting the recognition, or but you know,
especially EAs,
absolutely.
Assistants and admins and executive assistants. If all the people that I coach, the majority of my executive assistant coachees say that my voice doesn't matter, my opinion doesn't matter. All I do is just do stuff. And how do I become heard?
And I think that's ultimately what you've done. Is it took you to go on a personal journey to work out that your voice does matter, and
Absolutely.
that actually your part in this is hugely important to the success of the execution of an idea. An idea is just an idea. Otherwise, it needs execution, and everyone has a place in the team's success in the role. But talk me through the journey you went on and how you went about realizing that your voice mattered and that you had a purpose and that your work was important.
Sure. So generally speaking, the steps that I took, I should say, really has been in this last decade. And thankfully, I owe a lot of this to Simon Sinek and the organization, and some of the folks that work there. A woman named Kim Harrison has been very integral in how I've changed my life. But, the process was really first figuring out my why, figuring out my purpose, and who I was and why I was even here on this earth. So that was sort of step one. And I cheated because I worked with the guy who came up with that topic. So I had the ability to do it. But we have a lot of different ways of finding our purpose and finding our why, not only reading books, but you can talk to a lot of people about it. So that was really the first step. But I'll be honest with you, even that just, it almost felt like it was, I knew it, but it was almost like it was just this blanket that was wrapped around me. It wasn't inside me yet. It was just on the peripheral. And I feel like when we grow as individuals and when we're on a trajectory, we sort of climb this ladder and we do a lot of things on this journey of self-reflection and this journey of growth. And then something happens and we sort of get knocked down a peg. And then we continue on and we continue on. And an amazing mentor of mine, Peter Docker, always talks about how the thing about that you have to remember is every time you do get knocked down, you're not going all the way to the bottom where you stopped. You sort of, you just come down a little bit and then you can shoot back up and then you just come down a little bit and then you shoot back up. But it's always exponential growth.
Yeah.
And so there were a lot of things that happened, which sort of knocked me down and took the wind out of my sails, but it's all about getting back up and you put your bootstraps back on and you keep moving forward. And then, it was, I had a series of events directly with Simon where I sort of came to the end of my rope and was, we would get into screaming matches because I was feeling insecure and fearful, and I would take that out on him, and he would continuously tell me that he did appreciate what I was doing and my skill set, and it just bounced off of me. I think a lot of people don't really take that in, don't really use that. And Kim Harrison, who I mentioned before, you said to me at one point, she said, if you only think you deserve a thimble full of love, that's all you're going to get. Everything else is just going to run over the top. Yeah. So it was definitely the experience that I had where, no matter how many times somebody appreciated me or put praise on me, I was like, yeah, whatever. I don't believe you. You don't think that I'm special. And then that sort of, I took that in, and then there were just like little things that happened, and people that I was meeting who would tell me like, wow, Simon couldn't do this without you, or wow, I couldn't do this without you, or some of those sorts of things. And then it really got to the point where I had to change my perspective and change who I was looking to find my tribe and find my value. I had consistently looked up to get my validation, consistently looked to my executive, consistently looked to my boss or the people who I admired to validate me and tell me that I was good at my job, that I was a good human. And when you're asking someone who is such a completely different personality style than you, that has different skill sets, different traits, them telling you that I was worthy, I took it in, but there was a part of me that was like, yeah, you think I'm worthy, but let's be honest, you don't actually know what I do. So when I started to look around to my tribe, I'll be honest, that was the sort of one of the last pieces that I was looking for. When I went to my EA community and my tribe of people and started to talk with them and had conversations about what we do and how much we help, that's where I got my validation from. I just changed the recipient. And that took me to a whole different plane. And really, it's just gone and grown from there, where the more you do it, it's like exercise. The more you do it, the stronger you get. The more you do it, the stronger you get. And I think you have to ask for help, look to your friends, look to the people who know what you do and trust you and love you, and consistently surround yourself with the people who make you a better person, and get rid of the toxic people in your life. We say that all the time and people go, yeah. But if you're surrounded by toxic people, there's only so far you're going to be able to grow. So all of those different components have really helped. And then, the past year has really just been a big spiritual journey for me to find out who I am outside of the work function. And that has helped me grow even more. So I think, it's been, I'm almost 42 years old now. It's been 42 years of the evolution, but I feel like I'm still on a good trajectory.
I take comfort from, and perhaps I'm the only one, but I always take comfort in the idea that things happen when they're meant to, and
Absolutely.
everything happens for a reason, and at the time it was meant to happen. And that always, you know, provides me with comfort, even if at that time whatever I'm experiencing is challenging, like right now. I'd always think, I know this is happening for a reason. I might not know what that reason is yet, but I can embrace it and move forward. But I think that's really brave what you just said, and I'm really grateful that you shared that, because I think that will resonate with so many people looking for external validation in places where you just might not get it.
Yeah. You know, it's hard these days. We live in such a filtered world, and everyone wants to put forth on this evil machine called social media. We want to put forth this persona of who we want to be. And when you're only showing who you want to be and not who you are, then people have a false view of you. And then you're constantly chasing the carrot, trying to live up to this false expectation that you put on yourself.
And that we put on others.
And that we put on others.
I mean, I think we're so mean to each other now. You know, like on social media, people are so quick to be
terrible,
horrendously
judgmental,
and it's just like, whoa, you know.
And if we all just came out and said the things, that's why I talk about things like, you know, how low the type of low self-esteem that I had, and I very much. Victimization and martyrdom was like a huge personality trait of mine for a really long time. It cost me relationships. It cost me my last relationship, was that attitude. And I'm forthcoming about that, because nobody's perfect. We're humans. We're messy. It's ugly. We don't have it all right. We strive our whole lives to get it right. And who the hell even knows what right is?
Yeah.
So let's talk about the messy stuff. Let's be messy with each other. And when you don't know the answers, let's raise our hands and say, hey, I need some help.
Yeah.
That's how we're going to survive.
I do think EAs are great at that. I think support people normally are very good at tapping into their network for help to get things done. You know, they can be really good at finding the best person for this, or, you know, but sometimes we try and do it all ourselves, right? And that's not.
And we're great at asking for help for who's the car service that we should use and where's that private airplane. But hey, I need some help with me spiritually because I'm just feeling crap right now. That's a totally different story. And I don't think we do that enough.
As a human race, I don't think we do that enough. And I think one of the big things I think that's going to come out of this for individuals and organizations and business leaders is a willingness to have even more open conversations about mental health and how we're really feeling, and what we're going through. And I think organizations are going to be more receptive to supporting people through those personal journeys, because, and this goes back to your original point around that when you get knockbacks and then they're going up a bit in the knockbacks, your life is a marathon, not a sprint. Your career is not linear. Like, it's not going to just continue to go up in a straight line. Like, it's going to drop down. But as long as as long as the general trend is going up, then you're going to be okay.
Yeah. And again, this goes back to like not being in uncomfortable situations. And we feel like whenever we get knocked down, we shouldn't tell anyone, and we should hide it, and we should look into it and go, oh my God, why did I feel that way? And I was doing so good. And then we beat ourselves up over it. And honestly, that takes you even further down. Like, just be in the muck, be in the crap of it. And, you know, I'm saying that to a lot of my friends right now when they're talking about what's going on in the world, and just like, oh, I'm so depressed. And I just want to get out of it. I'm like, don't be sad. It's fine. It's okay. It's a human emotion that our body, that we are born with, this is part of who we're supposed to be. It's okay to feel these feelings. Feel it. Use it to grow. Use that power and that energy of that feeling of anger and stress and pain right now. Use it, because that is energy that can be used towards something that is going to make the greater good, not only for yourself, but for the people that are around you.
Monique, asking yourself a question like, what's my why, or it's so difficult, isn't it? I had this conversation with my husband's sister's boyfriend a couple of weeks ago, and it was just really interesting because the viewpoint is that unless you're a sportsman or a politician or something where it's obvious that that's your passion and that's your that you're doing a job that you love because it's your passion, I think people assume that a job is just a job, and therefore what I'm doing, like you say, like maybe doesn't matter, or that why would I be passionate about it? But I think two things, like we need to reframe how we look at jobs and think about work-life integration, and if your job provides you the opportunity to do and be and use that time to do other things that you enjoy, then that's great. But equally, not everyone wants to be a sports player or a politician. Not everyone knows what they want to do. In fact, the majority of people don't have a clue, and are constantly reevaluating that. How does someone sit down and really think about what they're doing and why they're doing it and what that could mean?
Sure. Well, your why is it's your purpose. It's why you do everything that you do. It's the fire that is right inside of your belly that burns, that drives you to do the things that you do, drives your behaviors, and drives your actions. The job that you have is just a what. For sports players and politicians, that is not their why. Just because you play good footy, that is not your why. There's something else under it. And what you're doing, the football, is just the mannerism that you take to live out your why. So we tend as a society to confuse that and say, oh, because they play footy, that's their why. No, it's something completely different. So what you have to do, there's a lot of different ways that you can go about finding your why. I highly recommend the book, Find Your Why. I read that a lot, even when I, need to go back. It's by Peter Docker and David Mead. That is literally a step-by-step guide on how you can find your why, and you do it with a partner. It is the best resource that I know of to really find your purpose and get you close into it. But so going through those exercises, which I won't really get into because you could just read the book. But a part of that is just living, knowing or having some understanding of what your purpose is after going through these exercises, and just living it and not getting so tied to getting the perfect words that go along with it. It took me, I finally got the words that really fit my why after about 5 years of working with Simon. I had changed my words 15 times. But I would rather live my why for my entire life, or I would rather live my why for 10 minutes rather than have the perfect words for my entire life. Like, it's all about how you live it. Yeah. So knowing that, it's so important, and that as long as you're staying true to what your purpose is, all of the other things that happen around it, how you do it and the what's that you do, are going to be clearer, and it's going to be easier to know the path that you need forward, because you're living with your why, and you couple that with your values, and you can just be unstoppable.
Yeah, and it's accepting that it might not be what you thought it would be, I guess, right, as well, or...
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of people that say to me, oh, my why is to be a parent or was to be a teacher. And honestly, that is not it, because that is the what's that you took to live out your why. It's something completely different, is what your contribution is to the greater good of society. That is your why. Yeah. It is what your puzzle piece is, what your place is in the grander scheme of what's happening in the world, and how you contribute to that greater scheme. And it is always positive, even though people don't think it is. It's always a positive thing.
And I feel very lucky that I think because of my background, I've had to work incredibly hard for absolutely every single thing, because I didn't, we didn't come from a wealthy background, and I've always had to push myself in that regard. And I think my goal I've always been trying to prove that, you can achieve what you want if you're willing to work hard enough. And I think, as a business, obviously we champion the hidden heroes, but that is also my personal objective. It's like championing people who can do anything, because I think as as people, we underestimate what we're capable of. And I love promoting people who don't realize they're doing amazing things and actually then continue to go and do even more amazing things because they started realizing that their voice matters. And because you do public speaking now, and you're a really great speaker. What?
Thank you.
When did that happen? How did that happen?
It started, I guess, maybe 2 years before I left Simon's organization. So we're talking maybe 3 years ago. I was asked just to speak for a group of executive assistants. And it was very funny because I was like, you really want me to speak? Do you know who I work for? I work for Simon Sinek. You want to hear me talk? And so it was a weird transition. But once I got up there and got over the fear of it, I knew it was part of one of the whats that I needed to live out my why.
Yeah.
And I love public speaking. I love being able to offer a viewpoint that helps people just change your perspective, even if it's just one notch. I talk about this dial that we have on inside that you just turn up one notch every single day. And if I could just help bring in one little piece of a new perspective, then I feel like I've done my life's work.
Marginal gains, just little bits rather than big bits. Little steps, baby steps. That must have been quite a thing because going that's like, for most people public speaking is a lot of pressure, but
yeah, but when you actually work for the most sought after thought leader in the entire world, who everyone thinks he's the greatest public speaker that's ever walked, and he is. There's no doubt about that. Being compared to that, or my own version of being compared to that. And this is actually a really great point to bring up. I'm going into it thinking everyone is comparing me to Simon Sinek. Everyone is going to look at me and go, why doesn't she speak like Simon? Why doesn't she use the same metaphors as Simon? She's not as good as Simon. And I'm telling you, that was only me. Oh. Nobody in the audience even thought that, because I'm not him. I'm me. I'm a different human. I don't have to be that person. So sometimes it's this fear, it's this expectation that we have. A really great friend of mine, Paula Castro, she says, expectations are premeditated disappointments. And man, when she said that to me, that expectations are premeditated disappointments, that was one of those like knife in the gut, like, whoa, it gave me chills up and down my spine just listening to that, because I have lived by these false expectations for a long time. So it was really on me. And I still think I have things to learn in the speaking realm, but I'm really enjoying it and can't wait to be around people again.
Yeah, me too. I miss like just full on, I just miss, just giving people hugs. And what's really weird is like I go into a shop now and I'm like, oh, am I too close? Are we too close? Do I need to step back? Do I need to, and I've never been like that. I have zero awareness of personal space. So I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do? How am I going to live my life not being able to like touch anyone or, like hug anyone? It's going to be really...
Yeah, we kind of have to get back to that. We need physical touch. We'll die as a society if we don't have that. So
we have to. I mean, I just can't see that we won't. But you're so right about the expectations and like disappointment. If you live your life by placing expectations on yourself and others, you are going to be disappointed perpetually.
Perpetually.
But it is
self-made, no less.
It's hard to do though, right? It's hard to change.
Everything is hard. Everything is hard. Life is hard, and it is supposed to be. If you don't want life to be hard, then everything in life is hard. Flowers. When flowers grow, it is hard for them to do that. It is hard for them to open up their flower petals. So let's just I think we use it as an excuse, as, oh, that's hard, so I want to avoid it. Well, you know what? Everything in life is hard, and that's how we grow.
What did you, how did you feel when you talked to the executive assistants that first time? How did you feel after it?
if I'm perfectly honest, I probably went through a bit of a shame spiral. That was probably after, when I was alone. I'm sure there was like, oh, I didn't do it right. But immediately after, the feedback that I got from just sharing my story and telling people where I came from and the things that I went through, I will never forget that first speech. Someone in the back started crying when I started saying that I never thought I was good enough. I never thought I was worthy. I didn't know where to find my value. And when I looked up and I saw her crying, it took me back a little bit. And when I kept going and she came up to me afterwards and said, you know, something to the effect of, I felt that way my whole life and no one's ever put that in words, I started crying. And it was a really amazing experience. And that's kind of where I said, you know, this is hard, but I have to keep doing it. Because again, if I can take what's mine, my little puzzle piece, and use it to help someone feel better, be better, grow better, then that's my life's work.
And what do you, and so now what made you decide, right, you know, this is it, I'm going to go out on my own, I'm going to do my own thing?
Yeah. So, you know, the business was changing. The business of Simon Sinek was changing. He was slowing down a little bit, not speaking as much. And, you know, the face of the business was changing. And for a lot of different reasons, we had a lot of different staff there and so on and so forth. And the needs of the company and the needs of Simon had changed. And what he really needed was an executive assistant again. And I had grown to a level, I was his producer and I was really doing so many things. And I was on a trajectory that I wanted to keep growing and rounding out my skill set. So we both just sort of realized that you know, the job that he needed, the position that he needed to fill wasn't me anymore. Because I'm great in building and developing. I keep talking about the word grow and evolve. You can understand my why is just from my language. I love the development of something new, the build of something new and the growth. I'm not great in stasis. I'm not great in just maintaining the status quo and just sort of bobbing on the top of the ocean. And a lot of people are. That's just not my skill set. So those things put together, me not really wanting to be in stasis, I wanted to keep shooting for the moon, and his role changing, that it was very apparent that it was time to change, time to grow. And so it was hard because, you know, that was a decade of my life, and it was a very hard transition for so many reasons. But, you know, you got to do what you got to do in order to stay true to who you are. And I knew where I needed to go, and I knew that I had to leave in order to get there.
So I want to go into like finding out what you do now, but equally I think for the listeners, they'd be really interested in knowing how you evolved your role and how you like saw the opportunities where you could add value, and then actually added them. Does that make sense?
Sure. You know, I think it's I call it the possibility bucket. I have always been someone who was kind of never satisfied. I always wanted more, to my detriment a lot. But in the professional world, it actually worked out for me. And, you know, I started off as Simon's executive assistant, doing the typical things that one would do as an executive assistant. But as I was sticking my big fat nose into other people's business within the company, I started to see other needs that weren't being met. And I offered myself up basically. And I went into the possibility bucket and said, okay, you know, you guys have been talking about doing a live event for years since I've been with this company. Let's do it. I'm going to take it on. I was an event planner. Here's my plan. I went in, I presented it, and boom, we had a live event. I started to ask questions about who helps with Simon's book launches, like who does it? Who does all the stuff? Oh, well, Penguin does it. I said, okay, well, who on our team does all the stuff? Nobody was really the person doing it. And I raised my hand and I said, I want to do it. I'm not sure if I know how to do it, but I'm going to try. And let's work together and you tell me if I'm doing it right and we'll move forward. So my recommendation is you have to be the one to raise your hand and go into your executive's office or whoever is your manager and say, I want to be involved in that awesome project that I heard Mary talking about last week, because that really excites me. I think we tend to sit back and we will sit there and go, why hasn't anyone given me that cool project that I really want to work on? And God, I wish I could be involved in that. But we don't actually say the words out of our mouth. and we assume everyone knows what we want to do, what we enjoy, and what we want to be involved with.
And also
like,
what
how crazy is that?
But like,
how crazy is that?
No one's a walking CV. Like, no one's walking
Right.
around with their CV printed on their face.
Exactly. So if you really love marketing, go into your executive's office and say, hey, I heard Mary in marketing say this thing the other day, and it kind of sounds like this project that I was doing with you. I've already figured it out. If I work with her for 4 hours on Monday, those are the time that you're in your board meeting, you won't need me, and I have the ability to like go in with the solution, also with the flexibility, knowing that you might not have the right solution, and say, look, this is what I want to do. I've come up with a couple of ideas how I can make it work. Let's talk about it. And I mean, let's become a part of it. You have to be forthcoming and almost push your way into some of the things that you want to do. And that's what I did. And that's how I grew to becoming his producer. I was running the show. I was running all of his speaking events, doing all of his publicity and his PR. Everywhere that human showed up to, I was the one who organized it. And I made that happen, not him.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's the part that I think that's missing for so many people, is they're waiting for someone else to tell them what their career looks like.
And then sitting there and going, oh, why didn't they give it to me? They gave it to somebody else. Well, I guarantee you the reason that they gave that project to somebody else is because that person said it out loud and volunteered.
And why do you think some people, not just executive assistants, but it's across the board, why do you think some people don't put their hands up, even if, okay, let's discount the ones that just, like you say, maybe are just happy doing what they're doing and they don't necessarily want to do more. Let's discount those. Let's think about the ones that do really want to do more, but they don't put their hands up. Why do you think that is?
I mean, everything kind of boils down to fear. You know, a lot of the things that happen as humans, fear is one of the biggest driving emotions that we have. It's actually one of the more powerful chemical releases that we have, and drives a lot of our behavior is fear. And that's been since caveman era. So I think it has a lot to do with fear, and understandably so. I'm not saying that if those people that are not raising their hands, it's not right or wrong. I'm just saying that if you're the type of person that wants to move forward, you have to actually take the reins and drive the horse and drive the ship yourself.
Yeah.
And it's fear of not being willing to do it and not actually knowing how to say it, like communication issues. Talk about communication a lot. We are not practicing communicating verbally these days. We're typing everything, we're texting everything. It's short, it's incomplete sentences. And we have to practice this amazing ability that we have to use our voices to make ourselves be heard. And so using our communication skills, adding on top of that, just the guts, I guess, and to just go into somebody's office and say, look, I want to try this. I'm not going to be great at it. I'm probably going to fall down and go boom a couple times. But if you're willing to help me get back up and you're willing to sit down with me and say, okay, that kind of sucked, let's do it better next time, then I want to do it. Let's go.
And fear of failure is a big driver, and fear of rejection. Like, and I think ultimately, quite often if I think about me as an individual, obviously the amount of rejections I've had along the way, like if I took every no personally, if I let that stop me, I wouldn't know what to do. And in sales, we learn a basic, like no just means that I don't have enough information yet. Give me some more information, right, and then I'll be able to make a better decision. But it's really interesting that you bring up the word fear, because I'm sure you know Tony Robbins. He's been talking a lot about that at the moment. He's really been saying that the biggest virus going around at the moment is fear.
Absolutely.
And he was like, if we knew every day, if the narrative in the news every day was how many people die from car crashes and car accidents, we would never get in our car.
Yep.
And what you focus on is what you feel. And I think the narrative is so fear-inducing at the moment that it's almost impossible not to feel it, even as I would describe myself, and I'm sure you describe it, as a positive person who can think positively about things. But But even with that, you know, everywhere you look, it's like, boom, this, you know, it's fear everywhere. It's like, whoa, you know, it's overwhelming.
You know, and we have to understand that we are being fed that prescriptively by companies, by people who are making the decision to put fear in front of our faces. And we as humans have free will. And we as humans have the right and the ability to put our hands up and say, I'm not going to take your fear, because that is your fear, not my fear. And so politicians, and I'm not even going to go into the politics in America right now, but somebody very high up is a very big fan of pushing fear in everyone's faces. And what we're doing as a society is we're grabbing that fear and we are eating it ourselves, and we are putting it inside ourselves, and we are going, oh my God, it's right. Everything's crazy. Yeah. No, it is a person's opinion that is writing a news story. This is a human being writing a news story for other human beings to hear. This is not some dogma coming from the universe to you. So we have the choice whether to take it or not.
Yeah.
And you know, turn off the news, get out of social media, go outside, talk to your friends,
go for a walk,
be around the people who believe what you believe.
Yeah. And I think and that's what goes back to sort of what we were talking about right at the start with the importance of democracy. And you know, every single person's life and opinion matters. And I think we forget that, because we just think that we're just letting other people, we have, you know, historically let other people determine our futures. And again, like, even if it just goes back to what we were talking about just 2 seconds ago around your career, if you let someone else decide what your career is going to look like, it probably isn't going to be the career you want. But if you spend that time thinking
you're going to live their career dream, not your own.
Yeah. Whereas if you spend that time thinking, actually, you know, okay, that's fine, but actually this is what I want, then it seems so simple, doesn't it? Like, it just, you know, saying that, it's like, okay, that's really simple, let's do that. But I understand that is obviously harder to actually do in practice. But I do think, like, I've made a conscious decision not to read the news, because I just was like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, I can't, like,
I can't.
It's just too overwhelming. And I'm actually seeking out, you know, very different viewpoints and news sources rather than just mainstream, because I think
that's a really important point, that going outside of, you know, we each have these viewpoints and we each have our values and our why, and we each have our own opinions about things and what's happening in the world. And two things, we feel like everyone else has to have our opinions, and that we're right and they're wrong. Just because I have this opinion, that everyone else who doesn't have that opinion is wrong. And if you're not in my circle, then you're outside of my circle. And no wonder we are having the race issues and the misogynistic issues and all of the issues that we're having, because when you think you're right and everybody else is wrong, then there's 8 billion people who are wrong and there's one person who's right. That is a crazy way to live.
Absolutely.
And so, you know, we just have to be really just more tolerant of each other and say, you know, oh, okay, well, what are you made up of? Oh, interesting, cool. And looking outside of the viewpoints that we know that we've been taught, and looking to other things. You know, I hope that the people who are very strong politically are looking to the opposite side just for informational purposes. Because if you only,
you know, and that's the, like, because, like, I love this. There's a guy called Matthew Syed in the UK. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's a really well-known journalist, and he's written lots of fantastic books. And you know, he wrote a book called Black Box Thinking, which is all about what we can learn from the airline industry and how they every time there's an accident, obviously they use their black box. They adapt and they change. But he also wrote a book called Rebel Ideas, which I literally harp on about all the time. I'm like a broken record, but it's all about cognitive diversity. And, you know, he talks so much about this, about the fact that as a society now, we are being fed consistently information that validates our own thoughts and opinions, and we are afraid to seek challenging and opposing viewpoints. And actually, I find that terrifying, because that just creates echo chambers, and you need to be okay with someone challenging your beliefs. You don't have to agree with them, but you need to listen and validate their opinion, because like what they might not agree with you, and that's actually okay. Doesn't make them fake, doesn't make them not real, it doesn't make what they believe wrong. It's just not what you believe. But actually, along the way, something they say might make you think slightly differently about something you were totally sure you thought you knew. And somewhere in the mid, I always say, like, working in recruitment, we're privy to both sides. We always hear the two sides of the story, you know, what the client says and what the candidate says. And somewhere in the middle is always the truth, you know? And I think that's true of life, you know? You've got your belief, someone else's belief, and probably somewhere in the middle is the truth, you know?
There was a documentary on Netflix, and I'm totally blanking on the name of it right now. I will remember it at some point, but it's literally like, people don't realize that Google has algorithms, and Google knows your belief. Google knows if you're a Democrat or Republican. Google knows what your viewpoints are, because it tracks everything that you do. So if I typed into my Google green frog and you typed into your Google green frog, I guarantee you two different things are going to come up. And people don't understand that when you are looking at the same type of information over and over and over and over and over again, you're being fed that information more. The algorithms of this matrix, of this intelligent system that we have called computers and the internet, is feeding you more of that to reinforce your views. So if you start looking at good things, you will get more good things. If you are looking at bad things, you're going to get more bad things. Yeah. And so it's really, it's
about consciousness. It's about being present, right? That's what we're saying. Present. It's about actually not mindlessly wasting your time, you know, scrolling through stuff that if it doesn't make you feel good, stop it, you know? Like, you know that feeling. We know that feeling. It happened to me. I use social media for work, right? And and I don't do sort of, you know, I don't use Instagram personally. I'm on it, but I have like one follower, and and I just, because for that exact thing, it's like, you know, I find it overwhelming to see the sort of consistent portrayal of perfection, and also just being, you know, fed more and more and more of this stuff that I don't think makes me feel good. So I made an active choice not to do it, because it wasn't making me feel good. So I was like, I'm not going to do this. But I think, you know, and that's okay. Like, and if other people, it makes them feel fine, and they can just look at it and they think this doesn't impact them, then that's absolutely cool too. But for me, as personally, it did. So I stopped.
It does impact everyone, whether you know it or not. Your body shoots off cortisol and chemicals when you're reading these bad stories, even if you don't actually feel anything from it. And I can guarantee you that affects how you show up for your partner and your children and your friends and your family. So even if you don't think it's bothering you, even if you don't think it's affecting you, I have no idea. It is.
And do you think it will, do you think it will change?
We have to change that.
Yeah, I was going to say, but do you think that over the next few months and years, as a result of all of this, it will change?
I do. And again, I'm an optimist, so I believe that we build ourselves, and existence will go on. So I think it will change. And frankly, this whole pandemic of needing to be inside and being with your family. I mean, you even said it yourself, the amount of time you spent with your kids. And I feel like the family unit has had a resurgence. Thank God the family unit has had a resurgence. And people are understanding that, you know, okay, should I look online and read the news, or, you know, should I go out back and just throw the ball with my kid? Like, let's just go out back and throw the ball with the kid. And I love it that is what's happening more and more and more. I'm driving down the streets of Denver, and I see families out front on slides and playing with their kids and doing their things. And I was almost moved to tears a couple of weeks ago, just watching this all happen, because I hadn't seen this in years.
Yeah. And also, like,
Great.
for me, the family meal time is like really hugely important. Like, I always rushing to try and get home to have dinner with the kids. And
Mm-hmm.
now I'm like having 2, if not 3 meals a day with them,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
great. It's like really, really, really great. And I think it's caused me to sort of think, right, what do I actually want from my life? And I am
Yeah.
a hard worker, and that's never going to change. And I'm always striving to achieve and improve whatever I can, myself, the people around me, everything. And I know that's not going to change, but I think the pace, maybe not even the pace, I think it's the way I was doing it. I think I was just so like ineffective before, like I felt like hard work meant slog. And I'm not saying there isn't truth in that, because I think, I don't know where I feel with that. I still think you need to slog a bit, but equally I think that actually there's not a badge in that anymore. There's no honor in like slogging yourself to death to achieve something.
Yeah, and look at what you're teaching your kids now. I mean, look at the great lessons that you're teaching your kids. If nothing else, let's pay attention to that. About your kids are, whether we like it or not, they are looking to you and they are watching what you do. It is not the words that you say. It is nothing to do with the words that you say. It has everything to do with the actions that you're taking. And so as parents, if you're with your kids and showing them that this is what's important, guess what they're going to grow up and think? That their family is important. And if you're modeling, I say this all the time, that if you have a job that you hate and you're frustrated and you're stressed and you come home every day and you complain about your boss and you're like, arr, 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 guess what you're teaching your kids is that that's what the meaning of work is. Work equals being stressed, feeling like crap, hating your boss, complaining. And so when they grow up, they go, oh, this is okay. This is all right. I'm supposed to feel like this when I go to work. And guess what? It's not. If you have a job that you love, that makes you feel good, that helps you live your purpose and live your why, you're teaching your children that they should not settle for the crap job with the crap boss and the crap salary, that you can keep going until you find the goodness. I love that. I mean, I love this time for that.
I totally agree. And I think for me, that's just one like really great thing that's come out of this. And Monique, I'm just conscious of time because we're like coming to the end of our allotted time. So moving on to what you're doing now. Tell us a little bit about that and how you came up with the idea for it and what you're doing.
So, again, my passion and my purpose is helping people figure out their part that they play in the greater existence, in the greater world. And I have my part to play there. So what I'm really doing now is speaking and coaching for leaders, speakers, and executive assistants. Those are sort of my buckets. Speaking has obviously, the world of speaking has changed very much. It used to be me on the stage. Now it's a lot of virtual conferences. So that's the speaking side of it. But coaching is something that I'm doing a lot more of these days. And again, I coach executive assistants, helping them either career trajectory, career growth, just becoming a better version of themselves. What is their next evolution? Same thing with leaders. I can help you there. Also, the evolution of just needing to come to the next evolution of your business. So you want to take on a new project. You want to put forth a new product out into the world. You want to take all of your content and make it digital. Like, what is the next evolution? A book launch, a thing, or growing your team, growing your business. How do I do that? That's really where I excel, is in building the systems and building the machines behind helping people get to their next evolution. So that can be personally or professionally. And I'm also still just working with a lot of speakers and helping them, again, get to their next evolution. Is that building a better keynote? Is that taking your content and putting it online? Is that writing that book? Is that creating 4 new keynotes? Whatever that might be, whatever your next step in life is, I can help you build the machine to get there.
And what's the future for you? What do you think? What's the next 12 months looking like for you? Do you know?
I mean, I kind of, I think the world is going to continue on with or without me, and the world is going to do what it needs to do. But again, I have control over my person and what I think. So I'm going to stay positive. I'm going to keep getting my hands dirty and rolling up my sleeves and being a part of the solutions. I'm going to help people get to their next level. That is absolutely going to be something that I do for the rest of my life, helping people get to their next evolution. I'm probably going to go through a lot of growth and change, as is the world. But again, I only have control over who I am. I don't have control over that outside world. So I want people to separate themselves from that to a certain extent, knowing that, what happens out there doesn't necessarily have to influence who you are, but what you can do is influence. You have to switch it. You have to be the influencer to the greater world, as opposed to having the greater world be the influence to you.
I like that.
And so I'm gonna keep evolving and growing and helping people be their best versions. And I'll probably do that until I die.
And what do you think the future looks like for executive assistants post-COVID?
Post-COVID, we as a strength set, we have the ability as executive assistants to do a lot. We are capable of a lot. We can take really messy problems and pull it all apart and stretch it and figure out exactly what needs to get done to fix it. And I think that skill set is going to be unbelievably useful in our next evolution as a society, is those people that can help build those machines for companies and help the greater good. And I would say for those EAs out there who are looking, who maybe have been furloughed and looking for a new job, align yourself with companies that have the same values that you do, that are going to bring the change you want to see out in the world, and use your strengths to help that greater good, as opposed to just taking a job just because.
Yeah.
That's my
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. And I think for my view on sort of the future for EAs is that it's a really bright one if you're willing to do all the things that we've talked about right now and over the last hour and a half. It's a kind of, you've got to put your hand up, you've got to retrain if you're not comfortable with something. And if you're in an organization and you're not like not being pushed the way that you want to be, then that's your opportunity to change that. And I think
Sure.
It's there's a huge amount of change that's coming our way, and I think so many assistants are worried about artificial intelligence and that taking over their job. And I think ultimately, if you don't adapt and all you're doing is the repetitive stuff, then possibly that could happen. Sure. But equally, I think there's always a need in a team for people who are the doers, who can complete things, who can take something and execute. And I think that's where my view is, that's where you guys excel, and it's kind of your time to shine really is now in that regard.
I mean, what separates us from the machines is our ability to communicate and our ability to redefine complex problems. Mm-hmm. So, machines will never take over that. They will never be able to unravel complex problems like systemic change, like racism and diversity. A computer's never going to be able to do that. No, so we have to learn to use our voices and communicate that out.
Absolutely. And it's like emotional intelligence, Mm-hmm. I think Google DeepMind, obviously they're like big AI people, and they do lots of tests, and they regularly run tests where they do like AI and AI versus human mm-hmm. and AI, and human and AI always beats AI plus AI. So mm-hmm. it's like, use it as a tool, don't be it's coming. It's the fourth industrial revolution. Like, it's coming, yeah. but just use it as a tool. And when we used in the UK, we used to transport goods by canals, and then overnight it felt like it was transformed to trains, and trains were just considerably better than canals. And it's just kind of the way it is. Like, it's the lobster shell all over it. It's just the way it is, and you just gotta embrace it. But I think Monique, I've so enjoyed chatting to you. I think I literally could chat to you for hours. I think we do actually have very similar beliefs on things. I'm so grateful for you giving up your time. And I'm sorry I haven't been able to have my camera on. I think the internet was just so bad here.
That's okay.
That it's easier not having it on. But yeah, thank you.
It's quite all right. Thank
that.
you for this opportunity to talk with your audience and to be a part of this. I love chatting with you as well. We could have probably talked for another hour, so we'll have to keep doing these. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks, Monique. And I guess I'll share your contact details. So for any of you guys out there who want to contact Monique to find out a bit more about what she does, and perhaps you've been inspired to utilize her to help you, re-identify and think about what the next phase looks like for you, which I would, I'd highly recommend for everybody to do, is whether you do that with Monique or not, it's just a really good thing for you to be doing. But I'll be sharing her contact details. So obviously you can get in touch with her there. And yeah, it's Friday. What are you doing? What are you doing for the weekend? Staying at home?
What am I doing for the yeah, I mean, what am I doing? I've it's interesting. I've traveled for so long, and when I worked with Simon, we were on the road 200 days a year. So my feet were not on the ground for very long.
Wow.
So the fact that I've been home for this long, I've actually been getting into some house projects. I've built a garden, just doing some house projects, and I'm really enjoying kind of the domestication of my life all of a sudden. So again, it's just change. I'm enjoying it.
Well, we are gonna there's a little where we're staying. There's like a little muddy beach, and we're just gonna go and throw some rocks in the sea and eat some fish and chips, and pretty chilled. The weather's a bit rubbish, so it'll be wellies and raincoats.
Yeah,
us jumping up and down in lots of puddles. But I'm gonna let you go. Thanks, Monique. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Bye, everyone. I will see you soon.